Help, I beg you!" exclaimed Noelle when she saw a car stopped near the curb. "Thank God," she thought. "At least someone still has humanity left. I thought I would die on this cursed road." The poor girl had been standing there for only 15 minutes, but it felt like an eternity as she desperately tried to flag down every passing car. As soon as the driver got out to see what was wrong, Noelle rushed to him. "Please, take me away from here," she pleaded. "Please, if you don't help me, no one will. Don't go away. Don't leave me here alone. I can't escape without you. Hurry up. Let's go. Why are you just standing?" Noelle was ready to jump into the trunk of the car, which bewildered Henry completely. He didn't understand what was happening, and certainly didn't want to get involved in someone else's problems. He had enough of his own, especially having just gotten out of prison. He could have driven past, like dozens of other cars, but something made him stop. His nature wouldn't let him ignore someone else's misfortune. That's why he pulled over to help this stranger who clearly needed it. Something terrible had obviously happened to her, but there was no time for questions. "All right," he muttered. "Get in the car. I'll take you to my village and we'll figure out what to do with you later." Henry gestured for her to take the back seat, but she firmly refused. "Can I get in the trunk?" she asked nervously. "I think it would be safer that way, you know?" "Someone's following you, right? Fine, get in. Why'd you have to pick my car?" "Sorry," Noelle mumbled guiltily, too exhausted for explanations. She was just grateful this stranger had stopped, dreading what might happen if he changed his mind. The journey to Henry's grandfather's old dacha wasn't short, at least 200 kilometres to go, but the man enjoyed the drive, relishing the feeling of freedom. After years behind bars, everything felt like a pleasure, so he drove on tirelessly. Unnoticeably, he sped up the limit. But who didn't on these highways? So Henry's car caught the traffic officer's attention. "Breaking the speed limit, aren't we?" the officer asked with a smirk. "Don't bother answering, that's rhetorical. I can see you're speeding. License and registration, please, and open the trunk. Let's see where you're headed and what you are carrying." Henry was shocked by this turn of events. Just what I need. I pick up a stranger and now I might end up back in prison because of her. The man tried to maintain his composure, but his nerves were shot. He could already picture the officer's face upon finding the woman in the trunk. If she didn't tell the truth about what happened, things would go terribly for Henry. She might claim he'd kidnapped her, and then he'd be finished. His thoughts raced, each one darker than the last. Despite everything he'd been through, he'd never found himself in such an absurd situation. Henry had suffered a lot in his life. He still couldn't comprehend being imprisoned for years over someone else's crime when he was innocent. His mother, Rosalie, didn't live to see her son's release. Her heart gave out. The neighbours had tormented her so much that she practically begged for death. "Your son got off too easy," they would hiss whenever she bumped into them on the stairwell or near the building. "He should have gotten more time. Drunk jerk, he ruined a good man, and for nothing at all." Rosalie tried not to go out into the street so as not to run into her neighbours. Her son was punished for helping their neighbour, Ingrid, when her drunken husband Kyle nearly killed her. Henry had only hazy memories of that fateful evening that changed his life forever. Coming home from work, he heard the usual loud clatter and commotion in the opposite apartment, nothing unusual in their routine. The neighbours were arguing heatedly, but Henry and his mother had no interest in joining their drama. They had always kept to themselves, uninterested in these household squabbles. That evening, Henry would have stayed in his room, if not for the unusually loud screaming. "Mum, are Kyle and Ingrid fighting again?" he asked, "or are they just arguing with the neighbours?" "Maybe they're fighting," his mother replied indifferently. "What's it to us? People who can't live peacefully should move out. Instead, they stay and get on everyone's nerves, causing scenes daily. Kyle's always drunk, and Ingrid not only puts up with it, but makes everyone else endure it too. They have no shame, no conscience, forcing the whole neighbourhood to listen to their fights. Mark my words, it'll come to blows one day. They're both so reckless, especially Kyle. She chose him. What can we say? She defends him, calls it love. They'll love each other to death, or until they kill each other. It happened sooner than Rosalie and Henry imagined. Even Ingrid didn't expect this family quarrel would turn violent. Kyle had never raised a hand to her before. Ingrid assumed this would end in just another verbal fight, but Kyle had lost his temper. "I've had enough," he raged. "I'm sick of your endless complaints and whining about this lousy job, about having no strength left. If you keep nagging, I'll give you something to cry about. I'll hurt you so bad you'll learn your lesson. I'm a simple man, Ingrid. I can get angry. So angry the fists will fly, I promise." "Oh, who wouldn't doubt that?" Ingrid snapped back, instead of staying quiet until her husband calmed down. Henry barely remembered rushing into the stairwell when he heard his neighbour's desperate cries for help. His mother tried to stop him, but it was useless. Henry had always been secretly in love with Ingrid, but he never dared admit it. While he hesitated, Kyle entered her life. A worthless drunkard from the suburbs, Henry couldn't understand how she could share a bed with him. The mere sight of him would make anyone sick. His personality was just as repulsive. He was the complete package of everything a man shouldn't be. Yet somehow Ingrid fell in love with him. She couldn't imagine life without this wretch. So, getting into Ingrid's apartment, Henry saw the knife in his hands and pushed him away from the woman. The drunken Kyle got up from the floor and took a swing at Henry, who dodged it. Kyle, who had not expected it, could not resist and fell down, hitting his temple on the edge of a magazine table. "He hit the corner himself," Henry protested. "You saw it. Why are you lying so shamelessly? I saved your life. He was with a knife." "Who knows what would have happened if I hadn't pulled that madman away? He was so drunk he could barely stand. That's hardly my fault." "Let's say I'm not grateful for what you had done," Ingrid sobbed, still unable to believe Kyle was gone. Though the neighbours had always despised this nasty drunkard behind his back, they suddenly rallied around him in death. "That cursed corner!" Henry exclaimed when his mother visited him in prison. "I never meant for him to hit it like that. He just fell. I couldn't believe it at first, but he was dead. But now I can't take it back." "How unjust this all is, son," sighed his mother, who wanted to tear apart the brazen liar who told the investigator Henry started the fight. Ingrid didn't mention the knife either. But who would believe Henry? Months later, Ingrid sold her apartment and vanished without telling anyone where she was going. The neighbours kept blaming Rosalie and Henry, saying, "It wasn't your business to interfere in their family. They'd managed their problems for years. They would have worked this out too." Everyone repeated the same things, making Rosalie's life miserable. Though Henry received a relatively light sentence for his crime, he still had to serve several years in prison. Henry's mother visited him in prison once, but her health deteriorated severely afterward. His greatest regret, one he could never forgive himself for, was being unable to give his mother a proper burial. He simply couldn't. Ingrid and her Kyle had taken everything from him, yet he had loved her deeply. She proved to be heartless, a betrayal he could never forget, even if he wanted to. It wasn't just his life was ruined. She drove his mother to the grave too, constantly crying to neighbours about her poor murdered Kyle and how that worthless fool Henry got what he deserved. Henry never regretted Kyle's death. He was glad fate had punished him through him. Men like him deserve such endings, he thought. They don't belong among decent people. The world is cleaner and quieter without him. That's simply a fact. Given the chance, Henry would do it again because it was justified. Kyle was going to hurt Ingrid. He had ruined Ingrid's life. Since she had taken up with that wretch, she hadn't known a moment's peace. They fought constantly. What did she see in him? Henry couldn't fathom it. He had courted her properly, with flowers and movies, everything done right, but Ingrid rejected him. Was it my looks? Henry lamented to his mother. Why did she refuse me? Never mind, son, sighed Rosalie, who had never wanted Ingrid as a daughter-in-law. She had always disliked her neighbour, and Henry knew this well. But he would have married Ingrid anyway, his love for her unyielding, despite the heartache and turmoil it brought. Even against the world's wishes, Ingrid gave her heart to an unworthy man. He had nothing going for him, no real job, no money, no future, and no character. They lived in constant conflict, yet she was in love. Simple as that. Nothing could be done to change her mind. What do women see in such worthless men? Rosalie would often wonder aloud, never hiding her feelings about Ingrid. Her only son went to prison because of her. She slandered him without remorse, but it was as if scales fell from Henry's eyes. His love vanished as if it had never existed. While still incarcerated, he vowed never to love anyone again. He had had enough of that loathsome feeling. He had loved before and sacrificed himself so that foolish woman could live. Kyle was so drunk that he would have killed her without a second thought if Henry hadn't intervened for Ingrid, and she didn't even bat an eyelid. All these women are the same. And now he had picked up this girl on the road. And for what, he wondered? Henry didn't even know her name. Now he was in deep trouble again. It seemed things couldn't get any worse. He had only recently been released, and now he was entangled in more trouble. You can't refuse a traffic policeman. He had to open the trunk. There, curled up in fear, was Noelle, trembling. She realised the gravity of the situation and didn't know what to say or do. It seemed impossible to imagine a more foolish and absurd predicament. Henry didn't know who this girl was or where she had come from. He didn't know who she was running from or what had happened. So, when the officer asked what was going on, the man predictably stumbled over his words. He waited for Noelle's explanation, fearing she might say the wrong thing. Fortunately, his fears were unfounded. The girl told the truth, how she had escaped her tyrannical husband and how Henry had saved her. "He's done nothing wrong," she stammered. "He has nothing to do with this. I just asked him for a ride and he gave it to me. Please, don't detain him. Let us go. If my husband catches up with me, he'll kill me." "And where do you plan to go?" The officer smirked. "If your husband is as tough as you say, there's nowhere you can hide. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, he'll find you." And the most terrifying part was that Noelle knew it was true. What else could she do? Continue to endure the abuse? For years she had gritted her teeth and suffered in silence, but now her nerves were shot. Who could endure such a life? Her marriage was a never-ending nightmare. Noelle never imagined her life would turn into such hell when she married Raymond. She had always dreamed of marrying a worthy and wealthy man who would provide for her and make her feel secure. She saw nothing wrong with wanting a comfortable life. And she believed her youth and beauty were valuable assets that would pave her way to a better life. Education and work seemed less appealing than marriage, despite her mother's attempts to persuade her otherwise. "What good is college?" Noelle would argue. "Years of study for what? To earn a pittance at first? No, thank you. I don't want to struggle like that. I'll marry a decent man, not someone like my father. I'll have his children and he'll provide for me." So Noelle was determined to secure her future through marriage, convinced it was the key to the life she desired. Naive Noelle. did not understand the consequences of a marriage where the husband was everything, and his wife was nothing and nobody. Initially, Raymond seemed like a decent man, so well-mannered, respectable, reliable, and responsible. At some point, even Noelle's mother believed that her daughter's relationship with this man would turn out perfectly. At least, she wanted to believe it, which was understandable, because a mother wants her child to be happy. But happiness was short-lived. Noelle's married life quickly turned into hell. It hadn't even been 6 months since they officially registered their relationship, and her husband began to show his true colours. He was not only reliable and responsible, but also very domineering. He wouldn't let Noelle take a single step without his control. He dictated to her what to do, where to go, and what to wear. He made it obvious who the boss was in the house. But that wasn't the worst part. Noelle would have been willing to submit if Raymond hadn't blamed her for the lack of children. The fact that she wasn't getting pregnant was a constant source of tension, even though Raymond himself had never had children and was significantly older than Noelle, something that hadn't escaped Noelle's mother's notice. "What does he think he's doing?" wondered the woman. "He should check not only his reproductive health but also his head, which clearly needs some fixing. And overall, Noelle, you should break up with him." Yes, Noelle had turned into a caged bird in this marriage. Not only could she not take a single step freely, but she also had to endure constant reproaches and accusations. Now the young woman would have been glad. He considered his wife his property and had no intention of parting with her under any circumstances. Therefore, Noelle was even afraid to think about leaving. She understood that this could lead to serious consequences, and since the matter was limited to screaming and scandals, she endured. Especially since, after each quarrel, her husband would shower her with money and expensive gifts as a form of apology, and then everything would start all over again. And so it continued until the day it escalated to physical violence. That day, Raymond was not himself. As soon as Noelle saw the evil expression on his face, she knew something was wrong. Her husband, as had become increasingly common, was ready to explode. But Noelle couldn't have imagined that such a serious scandal would erupt between them. "So, you don't want children?" Raymond growled, shaking pills in front of Noelle's face. Pills that her doctor had prescribed. Noelle had hoped that the treatment would work, and as soon as she completed the course, she would get pregnant, which would soften Raymond and change his attitude towards her. But her husband didn't even let her speak. He shouted and shouted, covering her with the worst words. In his eyes, Noelle was a liar, a traitor. She heard every insult imaginable. And when the scream of his cruelty reached its end, he moved on to actions. Noelle barely managed to escape with her life. She didn't even understand how she managed to run away. Fortunately, that day Raymond had emptied the entire bar, so he wasn't very steady on his feet, and while he was gathering his strength, Noelle managed to slip away. Her salvation was jumping into Henry's car, which proved to be the most necessary rescue for her. Luckily, the officer understood everything correctly, and before letting them drive their way, he advised Noelle to file a police report against her husband. "It would be better," he said, "first of all, for yourself. Think about yourself. Where will you run now? He will find you sooner or later anyway." "I will hide her at my place," Henry reassured. "No one will find her there. I can guarantee that." Noelle was willing to endure anything, even a life devoid of modern comforts, if it meant escaping Raymond, who was frantically searching for her lately. His troubles had piled up, business problems, and now Noelle's disappearance. He was certain she had fled to her mother's, for where else could she go? Raymond knew that besides Philippa, Noelle had no one else to turn to. Imagine his surprise when he found that Noelle wasn't at her mother's, and instead of welcoming him, Philippa threatened to call the police. "You've picked the wrong opponent," she sternly warned. "I won't let anyone harm my daughter, especially a scoundrel like you. It's in your best interest to ensure Noelle returns home safely, or I'll report you, and you'll regret it." "As if I care about your threats," Raymond sneered. "I have no idea where your daughter is. She ran away from me, her lawful husband. She's ungrateful and brazen, just like you raised her." "Get out of here," Pippa exclaimed, outraged. As soon as she kicked him out, she headed straight to the police station. From that moment on, Raymond's life spiraled into a series of misfortunes. First, he was detained for allegedly kidnapping his wife, and later he faced charges for other misdeeds. But Philippa's only concern was finding Noelle. The police had no leads, leaving the poor woman distraught. "We've arrested Raymond Ramirez," an officer told her when she visited the station. "We're searching for your daughter, but we have no news yet. Do you have any idea where she might have gone? Perhaps she fled to a friend's after arguing with her husband." "My Noelle has no friends," Philippa sobbed, losing hope. "Maybe that monster killed her and hid the body. Have you interrogated him?" "Yes, we have," the officer replied. "Raymond claims Noelle ran away, but he doesn't know where. You might have a better idea of where she could have gone." "I have no idea," Philippa sighed. "If I did, I wouldn't be here, and Noelle would have contacted me if she felt safe." The arrest of such a prominent businessman couldn't go unnoticed, but Noelle and Henry saw the news on TV. At Henry's late grandfather's dacha, they had an old but functioning television that Henry occasionally turned on for entertainment. "Noelle, look! They're showing your husband on TV!" Henry called out. "They've locked him up! You don't have to be afraid anymore. He's behind bars, and you're safe. You can sleep easy now." Dropping her garden tools, Noelle rushed to the TV, barely believing her good fortune. "Thank goodness! This nightmare is finally over," she exclaimed. "I can finally breathe easy." Noelle felt immense guilt for the worry she had caused her mother, who had been beside herself with concern. But of course Philippa was overjoyed when her daughter was found, but was taken aback to see her with an unfamiliar man. "And who is this?" she asked, alarmed. "This is my friend Henry," Noelle smiled. "Mum, meet Henry. He's a wonderful person and practically saved my life. Without him, I wouldn't have escaped that madman." Though they hadn't spent much time together, Noelle had grown deeply attached to Henry and didn't want to lose him. Henry, too, found himself no longer thinking about Ingrid, a promise he had made to himself in prison, but struggled to keep until now. Months later, Henry proposed to Noelle, and she accepted. She realized that true wealth lay not in money, but in the warmth, support and love she found with Henry. Though not rich, he treated her with kindness and respect. Unlike her former husband, who saw her as mere property to be controlled.